As soon as I walked out of there with that first deal, I just knew like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I've been doing it ever since.
This is Tim. He started out with just one single client paying him $2,000 a month, and since has turned that into multiple businesses, which now generate over $6 million in annual revenue. But the crazy part is, he didn't have any formal education. He started working as a carpenter.
Copyblogger was my education. Like I never went to school.
Today, Tim has multiple businesses and is an investor in many others, but really his strategy is simple. Start with client service-based businesses to generate cash flow, then spot specific opportunities from inside those businesses that you otherwise wouldn't have seen.
So man, if I were to tell anybody to do something right now, learn how to build Google My Business profiles, we call it GMB, and get in with the demand for it's just going to explode.
I flew out to Denver to sit down with him and learn how he started and grew his multi-million-dollar online businesses, the biggest opportunities he sees with service-based businesses, and exactly how he'd start today, and more about the business he's most bullish on, the directory business, which he calls the easiest and most profitable business he's ever done. We dive into what it is, how to start, a lot of goodies in this episode. Let's dive right in. Here we are, Tim, at your house/office. Yeah. You've started over 15 companies. Not all of them have worked, but 3 or 4 of them are working really well. Can you explain and share a little bit more about your businesses and what they do?
I'd like to think of myself as in the lead gen business. Lead generation is the best business model because it's something that is like, there's always going to be a demand for local service businesses or even nationwide businesses to generate leads. The first company that I started was a online recovery platform for people that might be struggling with like drug and alcohol addiction. It was called Sober Nation. That sort of turned into like a multimedia conglomerate of different websites. From Sober Nation, we started a SEO agency. Well, it's a lead generation agency, really. We do SEO and pay-per-click and even some like web design and development and stuff. And then third, there's a brand which is really, really close to my heart. It's called Copyblogger. It was a website that I used to read personally every single morning when I was learning how to do online marketing. And so it was like a real cool moment in my life to be able to purchase that company and kind of take the reins and take it over. And then lastly, there's another lead gen agency, which is connected to Copyblogger. It's called Digital Commerce. So Digital Commerce really specializes in e-commerce brands. So that's an SEO agency specifically for e-commerce.
What's a quick breakdown of just revenue for each of those?
Odds you'll do $2.5 million this year. Copyblogger, we're close to hitting $1 million. Digital Commerce it'll be anywhere in between 1.5 million and 2 million. And then Recovery Local, which is that media platform that I told you about, that'll be probably 1.2 million. Yeah, between the 4 of them, I think we should be around 5 million. I don't do the math in my head, so they always say not to do math in front of other people, right? But I think it'll be close to 5 million.
That's awesome. I think you started with just one client paying $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
How did this start for you, and how did it evolve?
I mean, I used to get in a lot of trouble as I was a kid, and I moved to South Florida. I had a cousin basically who like took me in, and I slept on his couch for a while. Through that experience living in Florida, I met a mentor, and he bought me an issue of Success Magazine. He bought me like a subscription for it. There was a Success Magazine that had a CD, and there was an interview with this guy named Seth Godin. And he said, start a blog, don't tell anybody about it, and write in it every day. I created a blog spot, and I just wrote every day. Through writing, people were discovering my website. And I didn't know how because I wasn't telling anybody about it. And so that's how I discovered SEO. Through SEO, I found Copyblogger. I learned content marketing. I started writing about my recovery through my own journey. And that's how Sober Nation started. I was building a community of people in recovery basically. And to my surprise, I would have a couple of treatment centers just reach out to me and say, how are you doing this? How are you building this demand? I just was writing. I didn't really have a good answer, but I saw an opportunity. And so that's how Stodzy Internet Marketing started. That's how the lead generation side of things started. I personally find in today's day and age with AI and automation and cool software that people are always looking for the next marketing hack, right? But nothing will ever grow your business quite like people having a good experience with your product or your service and then telling their friends. That's how I generated almost all of the business. After the first year, I I decided like if I'm going to be an SEO agency, then I want to show that I can do SEO. And so I really took a lot of pride in like SEOing my own website and generating leads that way. And it really paid off. We've always ranked like in the top 3. It's SEO, so it fluctuates for the keyword like drug rehab marketing, drug rehab SEO, behavioral health advertising. There's about 10 of them, 10 keywords that have generated almost all of the inbound business. And I've kept those keywords for the last 10 years. So I've never done any advertising. It's been through referrals and it's been inbound leads through the website. And that's it. That's how all the business was generated.
So you've also been making content for over a decade now and just sharing what you learn and what you're doing. One of the things right now, as it relates to one of your businesses, seems to be really resonating with people, these directory businesses. Can you talk about why that's resonating with people so much?
Yeah, it's been a surprise for me, but the more time I've had to kind of sit back on it, I've seen some patterns, I think, which is why it resonates with people. And that is with the directory, the marketing and the product are the same thing. So what do I mean by that? Let's say it's a local business directory. It's like denverbusiness.com because I live in Denver. Well, the way I'm going to market it is I'm going to reach out to local businesses and I'm going to say, hey, let me create a listing for you. I'll do it for free. I'll do all the work for you. As you get more listings, you get more attention. But then what happens as you get more attention, you also get more listings. And so it's not like you're creating content to market a product, which is adjacent but like autonomous from the content. What the content that you're creating is also the product. And so they ratchet up and they ratchet up and they ratchet up on each other. So it's sort of similar to a paid newsletter in a sense, but I think it's way more automated because your customer is generating the sale for you. So let's say that you're selling featured listings for a directory. Well, when you sell a featured listing, you've just sold a product, but you've also just marketed the website, right? And then another person is going to see that featured listing and think, oh, wow, well, this local business is doing it. I should do it too.
Can you maybe just walk through an example of like what is a directory business and one in particular?
Sober Nation is a directory business. That was my first website. That's how it all started. I think the best way to build them is through location. A location-based business directory, I think, is just a really simple and really, really good business model. If I'm in Denver and I'm building a directory of local businesses for Denver, if somebody Googles best coffee shops in Denver, right? They'll get to the coffee shop category in my directory. It'll be a whole list of coffee shops. Whoever wants to buy the featured listing will get to the top of that category. So they'll be like the first one that the potential customer sees when they're looking for the best coffee shops in Denver, right? So do you see how the more listings you sell, the more your directory gets marketed, and the more your directory gets marketed, the more listings you sell, right? So it's like this snowball effect of once it starts going, it becomes like really, really profitable.
And especially once you choose different directory businesses that maybe are more profitable than others, can you just walk through another example, maybe something with maybe more revenue tied to the lead?
You nailed it. That's a really important part of this model. It's underappreciated. Not a lot of people see it. This is especially true for like new and emerging industries. So another example that I would give is actually moving. It's only been within the last 10 years that people move as much as they do. I mean, especially with COVID, people are traveling all over, but families move a lot as well. So a great directory idea would be moving companies that can transport like your home from one place to another. I don't know exactly what the keyword volume is, but I bet if you were to go state by state, like moving company in Colorado, or then even state to state. So like moving company from Pennsylvania to Colorado and all the combinations of them. Wow, it's a lot of search traffic. And what's more important, as you said, it's a very, very like highly profitable business because moving companies themselves, they'll pay a lot of money to get that customer because it's so valuable for them.
It seems as if like with your businesses, you've started to solve one specific problem, and then that led to you seeing other problems. So maybe that's the evolution from service-based cash flowing businesses to then investing that into other places. Can you talk about that step 2 of you have this cash flowing businesses and then what?
That's exactly right. Actually, you just mentioned it, Rite the Passage. What's that guy's name?
David Perel.
David Pro, yeah. He talks about like the serendipity machine or whatever it is
The
that he
surface
calls it.
area of serendipity.
Totally, yeah. When you have a service business and when you do good work, that's like the most important thing, right? Like when you do right by people, when people are happy with the service or the product that you've created, like there really is such a thing of people talking about you and telling their friends about you. And so suddenly over the years, my agency has created investment opportunities that I never would have had if it wasn't for like the reputation that I developed within the industry itself, right? Man, like I wish I had some cool framework or like some cool ebook that I could sell for 99 bucks, like how to get the best deal flow. But my answer really is just do right by people, do good work, know that people are going to talk about you. And like when you can solve a really, really specific problem, in my case, it's lead generation, the people that want that problem solved are willing to, in some cases, just give me equity to solve that problem. In other cases, it's like bring me in as a contractor and give me an opportunity to maybe purchase equity. And that's happened a bunch where, like I get a marketing contract and then essentially I'm just kind of getting equity for free over the course of 12 months or whatever, because that marketing contract just paid for the equity, right? So it's almost like earning in for free, right? There's like no risk at it. So yeah, like I said, I wish I had some cool, like really smart sounding answer for it. But my answer is just do good work and good things happen.
Yeah, what I love about your story is there's so much of you, like Tim, in the business as well as your personal content. I think that some people might just be looking for opportunities for see where there's demand in SEO, where one of my favorite quotes is start where you are, use what you have. And you just started where you were. You heard about Seth Godin and then started blogging, and you were using your own recovery experience and journey and sharing that. How important do you think that is for somebody watching this to just start where they are and to use what they have?
That's a great question. And I think it's more important now than ever. It's so easy to become commoditized now. And this is like another Seth Godin lesson where he talks about the only thing that you can do now is to become more unique. It's not even necessarily about being better. It's just about being more unique, about, as he would say, being a purple cow, something that differentiates you from everybody else. If your selling proposition, let's call it, is going to be like the cheapest or to be the easiest or the most commoditized, only one person can win that. And he calls it a race to the bottom, which it is. And like if you win that race to the bottom, you can be in pretty good shape. But you're probably not going to, because of the Amazons, of the Walmarts of the world, even with AI now, like the commoditized content. If you can win the race to the bottom, you're good, but you're not going to. So the only other option is to win the race to the top, is to truly differentiate yourself. And so I'd say now more than ever, the only thing that you really have at your disposal is to, like you said, be who you are with what you have, with the real unique life experience that you have, because anything else can be replaced or like replicated, so it's really the only thing that people can do now to stand out.
Can you talk about just your overall philosophy to approaching all of your businesses?
I'm a cash flow first kind of guy. I have no interest in getting funding, in getting investment capital, in spending a bunch of money on like a product or a service that I need in order to generate revenue. My philosophy has always been cash flow first, generate cash. And then if you have cash, then you have options. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. But if you don't have cash, then you only have one option, which is to be at the mercy of whoever it is that's like providing you with the cash. So that's why I've really stuck with service-based businesses. I think this philosophy reigns true for anybody. If you're like a photographer, if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, right? Something where you are exchanging a little bit of your time for money. There's different variations of that because not everybody's a freelancer, right? Like you can be in the service business and not just be charging however much money per hour. Like you can have monthly retainers or yearly retainers or like per project contracts, whatever it is. But the point is that it's still pretty low scale and it's still pretty personal, where like you're working directly with a customer or a client. I just think that that's the absolute best way for anybody to get started for a couple of reasons. One, you're never in debt, like you don't have to raise money. Two, you already have what it is that you're selling, which is like your expertise, right? Whereas with a SaaS business, you have to actually create the product first, which means that you have to spend money, which means you have to spend time and you have to go in the hole. And three, because they're instantly profitable. If I decide that I want to be like a wedding photographer and I'm going to start a wedding photography agency, we can say, well, as soon as I get my first customer, like I'm already generating a profit, I'm already generating cash flow. Until you have that original flow of revenue and more specifically flow of profits coming in, you can't really do anything. And so my philosophy has always been boring business first, work directly with your customer. And what the really added benefit of that is in doing so, you become an authority in a particular space. Like I'm just kind of known now as the lead gen guy for behavioral health, but it's really worked for me. And so now that I have this lane that I could basically own, the cash flow comes in. And so I have the freedom to do a bunch of other stuff. And that's how I've built my portfolio, and that's how I've made investments. And honestly, that's how I've like built relationships with guys like you, So I just think it's the lowest risk, highest reward way to approach making money.
If you were starting from scratch, are there any skill stacks that you would encourage people to learn to do good work?
There's one in particular, which I think there's just a huge opportunity. Local small business lead generation. This is especially true in America, by the way. So like we have a housing shortage in America. And even a lot of the houses that we have, they're like old. They were built in the 50s and 60s. And the style of the houses isn't really what millennials like. There's like a lot of walls and a lot of doors and stuff. So the only reason why that's important is because contracting work is going to explode over the next 10 years. And what else is happening with contracting work? Well, there's a huge shortage of laborers. Like there's not enough electricians. There's not enough carpenters. There's not enough cabinet makers. You can try to get a contractor in Denver right now, and they're booked out 2 or 3 months in advance. I'm sure it's the same thing in Austin. So what am I seeing? Local contracting leads, it's going to be an absolute gold rush. So what do I say you should get good at? You should get good at learning how to market Google My Business listings. And so that's also important for another reason, because if you were to Google a local business, let's just say it's electricians near me, right? You're going to see the ads at the top, like quite literally when you're looking on Google, you'll see the ads, and then you'll see the map pack that we call it. Like, that map with the little red pins. And then underneath that, you'll see the organic listings, which is links to websites. Well, AI is going to make it so that those organic listings are like more and more commoditized, because you can just create content to try to rank for that keyword. But that map pack, that's not content. That's a separate Google database. Like Google just owns that database, and then they populate the data through it. And so I think that Google My Business is going to be the most valuable space on the internet for the next 5 years. So man, if I were to tell anybody to do something right now, learn how to build Google My Business profiles, we call it GMB, and get in with as many local contractors as you can, because they are going to be so flooded with leads, the demand for it is just going to explode.
So how would you actually approach that? Would you just pick a specific type of contractor, or would you try to look at keyword research, or how would you approach that?
There's a slogan I heard a long time ago. It's simple things don't break. And so when in doubt, I just always try to simplify. So I would start with just one. I would try to be the best lead provider for roofers in your city, and just nail that down. Just figure out how to own the roofing industry in the Google Business Directory. Spend a year doing that. I promise you'll make plenty of money. But then the other thing that'll happen, which we kind of just talked about, is all of a sudden you'll just be the person who everybody knows as the go-to place to generate leads for this particular business, right? That's how I like to approach things. Like, let me just dominate this one thing, because the reputation that I'll gain by dominating that one thing will help with the other ones.
New segment idea. Will you roast my business idea right now?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. A while ago, I bought the domain austinowners.com.
Cool.
And I had a few different ideas for it. But what I'm hearing from you is potentially starting super local. And at first I was thinking business owners, but now I'm almost thinking homeowners, and it just being the best service provider, like Austin Owners roofs, Austin Owners paint, and then it's featuring basically a directory of the best service providers for any part of owning a home. Good or
I
bad
don't
idea?
have a roast. Like
No,
that's
right?
exactly what you should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Because you could, what's complicated to explain sometimes when I do videos like this about directories is like how they're actually built, because there's infinite ways that you can make categories for a directory, right? But if you have the location in the domain, that means the location itself is already solved for. So then your categories is nothing but the modality, I suppose, is the word. So then your categories are like best painters, best electricians, floor people, epoxy people, lawn care people. It doesn't matter because the category is just the different kind of industries that they serve, since the location itself is already solved for. So like, yeah, you should absolutely do that. Especially in a city like Austin, you'll fucking crush it.
Okay, great. Interview's over. I got to get to work.
Yeah. Sorry, Noah.
So oftentimes you'll hear people say that the tools don't really matter and just to pick something and get going. And I believe that's true most of the time. But also sometimes tools can create shortcuts. Have you found any of your favorite like tools or resources that you find yourself using like day to day that you love?
I want to answer the question, but I would also say that the first thing I thought of is not necessarily a tool, it's just a skill set. And being a good writer is just the most productive thing that anybody can do, I think, ever. If you can write, then you can think. And if you can think, then like you'll be able to navigate your way through business and through the world a lot better than any tool can give you. So with that being said, ConvertKit is really important for me. That's how I have made a bunch of my sales. Slack, I really can't live without Slack now because my team is like all over the world. And a sleeper that I think is so important is Loom. Man, Loom is life. I mean, just being able to communicate with my voice asynchronously through my team it's the best way, I think, to have like a digital business where you have employees all over the country, different time zones, all over the world. If you can record Loom videos and then just send it to them through Slack, you can do so much while also remaining low stress.
And do you ever think about you have multiple businesses, managing a bunch of people, having multiple businesses versus just one?
Yeah, all the time. However, I think I'm doing it right because I think it was Hermosi. He was a big advocate of just having like one business and going all in on it. And I do think in the beginning, you want to have one business because you can only focus on so much. But like the reality is that the world changes. And the business that you have right now, 5 years from now, for whatever reason, which you can't even necessarily predict or see coming, won't be that good anymore. And so as soon as you have money, as soon as you have cash, I really, really think diversifying is just the best thing you can do to hedge against like unpredictable events in the future. So yeah, I do think about how easy it would be just to have one thing to focus on, but I don't think that's the way to do it personally.
Is there anything that you believe today that you've changed your mind on that you thought otherwise before?
It's personal brand stuff. SEO is so good because there's intent behind it. Like if somebody Googles drug rehab marketing, you know exactly what it is they're looking for. And so if you are the top search query or the top search result for that particular query, even if you don't get a lot of traffic from that keyword, you're going to make a lot of money because they're high converting people. Like they're looking for exactly what it is that you have to offer. And so I always thought this idea of a personal brand and social media following was just stupid and it was a waste of time. If you can combine the two, like build an online following through social media, through a newsletter, through like your own ideas and your own reputation. I'd say really specifically now LinkedIn too, like almost all of the value that I get from my social media comes from LinkedIn. It's like a great wingman. You know, if I'm talking to somebody, I know that they're going to Google me and they Google me and they see, I got almost 50,000 followers on LinkedIn, which still isn't a lot, but even that has really, really helped boost my credibility. So yeah, it hurts because I still think social media is like super toxic in a way, but the deal I made with myself is I'm going to use social media. I'm not going to let it use me.
You have figured out these businesses. You have a combined business of millions of dollars of revenue. Do you think that you're just smarter than the average person, or you have just kind of gotten lucky or tried a bunch of things? How do you look at that?
I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question before. I think it hurts entrepreneurs to hear this really important truth because we're Americans, right? You just pick yourself up by your bootstrap. Like as long as you try hard, there's nothing you can't do. You need the timing. You need the timing to be right. And if there was luck in my journey, it was that I was getting sober right at a time where like the addiction epidemic in the country was really peaking, and when the need for these services were growing, but also more importantly, that the community behind recovery was actually turning into a thing. And I always kind of thought it was like Rob Dyrdek. I know this is like a stretch, but when I was a kid, I was a skater. I mean, it's all I did when I was a kid. And like I was always getting kicked out of places, and people thought I was a troublemaker just because I had a skateboard. And like I was a troublemaker, but it wasn't because I had the skateboard, right? But all of a sudden, Rob Dyrdek came along. And the timing of it was just so perfect, where like now skaters had like a brand and an identity, and they wore certain clothes, and like they listened to certain music, and like it was cool, right? And recovery kind of was the same thing, where it's just this timing of like this wave. I had the timing right, and without the timing, it never would have worked. I showed up every day. I wrote when I didn't feel like writing. I hit publish when I didn't think it was very good. So like I have no doubt that I put in all of the work, but was it because I'm smart? I don't know. I'm probably above average intelligence. Like I was in specialized classes when I went to school as a kid. The problem is I never went to school, so they kept kicking me out of the classes. But like, yeah, I don't know. I think you have to be smart, but I think realistically, timing is the most important thing. It's my favorite, where like when the economy's bad, everybody blames the government, but when the economy is good, nobody thanks the government. It's kind of the same thing. Like nobody ever blames themselves for the job that they didn't get, but when they did get the job, it's because they're smart, So I try to always stick the humility in there and realize that the circumstances have to be a certain way in order for me to succeed. But I put in the hours. There's no question about that. The timing was really good.
Earlier, we were talking about books and sort of mantras that you remind yourself. Can you talk about some of the ones that you look at on a daily or think about on a daily basis?
Almost all of the life lessons I've learned, aside from my own experience, has come from books. It's kind of cliche, but Think and Grow Rich, like, man, that book was the first eye-opening moment when I actually realized that like my attitude and my philosophy on the world around me, and like the way I approach situations, has like a physical effect on my world. We were talking before we started recording. Recently, a book called Essentialism helped me a lot. Less but better. I think about that a lot. Like, okay, how can I do less and how can I make it better? Less but better. The Infinite Game, I think, is like a sleeper. That one reminds me all the time, like there's no such thing as winning. There's just only playing. The best I can do is just keep playing. Geez, when you talk about books, I could talk about books for days.
When you think about, you're doing a lot of things and there's only so much time in the day, when you feel like you're in your zone of genius, what does that look like for you?
I'm writing. This will be like the whole imposter thing. I basically feel like I'm not good at anything except for writing. And when I'm writing, I feel like I feel like I know what I'm doing.
And before you discovered that or learned that, how did you go about finding your thing being writing?
I always knew. Yeah, even when I was little. You can't see it on camera, but there's a notebook on my desk in front of me. I have stacks of notebooks in my basement from when I read Harriet the Spy, actually. I don't know how old I was. I must have been 5 or 6, something like that. And I just thought it was so cool how she wrote everything that she saw. And I just started carrying a notebook with me. So my mom was like a poet. She really advocated for me to write. And this will sound weird saying on camera as I've been talking this whole time, but like when I talk to people, basically every time I say something, the first thing I think is like, oh, that didn't come out right. Or like I'm talking too much, or like I'm too wordy, or like I'm over explaining or whatever. But I don't know why. Like when I write, when I have the blank page, I know that what I am trying to communicate is what it is that I'm actually writing. So it's like a very comforting thing for me as well.
That's awesome. And to somebody watching this who maybe doesn't know what their thing is, or they see different opportunities, but they're not really sure where to get started to get that traction, what message would you share with them?
Write about it. Like if you want to learn how to do something, write about it. If you want to find a thing, then find something that maybe interests you and just start a newsletter about it. Write about it. Like nothing bad will ever come from writing about something. There's just only good things can happen. I don't know, it doesn't matter what it is. Like maybe you like cutting grass. Maybe it's just a thing that you think, oh, like how can I make a business cutting grass? Like, I don't know. But if you write about cutting grass every day for a year, like 1, you'll know so much about cutting grass. 2, you'll have a whole slew of people following you, because turns out there's a lot of people that like cutting grass, which you never would have known. And 3, like you'll have an actual audience about cutting grass, right? So like it always works. It's like one of the things that you can just take to the bank. if you want to get good at something, or if you want to learn about something, or if you want to like become an authority in a certain thing, just write about it. Just write about it every day.
I know you've learned a lot from Brian Clark. That's who started Copyblogger originally. And you have mentioned him. He has a blog called Longevity Gains. I'm curious, what have you learned from Brian Clark?
I learned everything from Brian. He was my favorite writer. But it's really interesting because I idolized him for so long and I didn't know him. And I love the book Fight Club. And turns out he loves the book Fight Club. And I was going through the Fort Lauderdale airport and he randomly sent me a Twitter DM because the bio in my Twitter was, "You are not your fucking khakis," which is like a famous Tyler Durden line. And so the first thing that like this hero of mine ever said to me is I had a grammar mistake where I had a YOU''RE. And he was like, "Dude, like it's possessive, it's not a contraction." And so the first thing he ever said to me was like dissing me, basically, right? And so he taught me all the skills I know, but really one of the biggest lessons I learned from Brian is like not to take anybody too seriously, because you see all these online personas online and you see like who they are and you get like your imagination starts going wild about how cool and how smart they are, but really everybody is just a person with families and insecurities and struggles and hobbies or whatever. And so as I've gotten to know Brian, it really removes like that allure of the online influencer, and I know it's probably not the answer that you were looking for, but it's really stuck with me.
No, I think that's a perfect answer. I could relate to a lot of that, like starting to work with Noah and just like seeing somebody as more of a human than an online presence. As you've read some of his things on longevity, has that changed your mind or given you other like business ideas or insights on longevity?
Absolutely. But it's important to understand what he means by longevity. His blog is about the fact that there's so many baby boomers now that he calls it the longevity economy, where like most of the people that spend money in the United States are 60 years or older. And in marketing, we always think like, what's the most valuable demographic? It's the 18 to 30-year-old, right? But that's not true anymore. Now it's the 60 to 80-year-old because they have all of the money, like, and they've just been hoarding all of the money for the past 50 years. And like, they're younger now, right? They're younger than they were in generations past. So these people aren't like just sitting around waiting to die, like they're going on cruises, they're going out to restaurants, they're spoiling their grandkids, they're, yes, like buying homes and having fun. You really, if anyone's interested in it, you really should check out his blog. It's fascinating and it's opened my eyes to this whole other like opportunity of how the demographics in the world have been shifting.
Amazing. Tim, this has been awesome. Thanks for sharing your story. Where can people check you out? And what's one final message that you want to leave people with, or maybe a challenge?
TimStodds.com. That's my newsletter, TIMSTODZ.com. Also, thank you so much for coming here, man. It's great to like sit down and talk to you. We've been online friends for a while. This is my philosophy on life. I live life a day at a time. The message is make it till midnight. And it really helps me because life is hard for everybody, no matter where you come from or what you got going on. And I think that a lot of us struggle because we think so far into the future. And anytime that happens to me and I'm starting to feel uncertain about the future, I always say, make it till midnight, make it till midnight. The only thing I ever have to do on any given day is just get till midnight. And then that's it. So my problems or the things that are stressing me out are never further than 23 hours and 59 minutes away. It's really, really helped me. And it's helped me like stay in the moment, because all of our problems are like projections onto a future that isn't even going to happen the way that like we think it's going to happen, right? So it's really stuck with me. Just make it till midnight. It's all good.
Make it till midnight, baby. Awesome. Tim, thanks so much.
Thanks, Mitchell. Appreciate
awesome.
you, man.
Sweet.